Imagine you're holding a compass. If the compass works, every time you shake it, it should point in the same general direction. However, if the compass points in a different direction every time you shake it, it's a broken compass. Arguments and evidence work the exact same way. If they point in the same general direction every time, then they probably indicate the conclusion you're looking at. However, if they can indicate many mutually exclusive conclusions, then they don't indicate anything and they're broken arguments. Therefore, in order to know that the arguments for the existence of God do not work, all you have to do is show that they can indicate many mutually exclusive directions or conclusions. In this video, I'm going to discuss a few of my favorite alternatives to theism, which can answer all of the arguments that theists use, proving that none of the arguments indicate theism. First is deism, which is essentially a God that either doesn't interact with us or doesn't care about us. Next is pandeism, which is essentially a God who created the universe but destroyed itself in the process. Then there's pantheism, which is essentially eternal nature. And my personal favorite, naturalistic pantheism, which is essentially the multiverse or the cyclic universe. The difference between pantheism and naturalistic pantheism is that naturalistic pantheism is limited to naturalistic things as indicated by the name, whereas pantheism itself can include supernatural things or non-material things. Another alternative would be panpsychism, which is essentially the consciousness is the base of all things. This would be like Deepak Chopra's non-local superposition of consciousness. Then there's a cosmism, where the entire universe is nothing but an illusion. Transtheism, where there's something above a god. Polytheism, where there are many gods. And finally, an all-evil god, which is the antithesis to the theist position. Oh, and also, of course, Pastafarianism, which is the belief in the spaghetti monster as a god. Any and all of the arguments that theists use to support theism can be answered equally by any of these alternatives. Therefore, none of the arguments theists use indicate theism any more than all of these alternatives. These are just a few of the infinite alternatives to theism. When there's no evidence to indicate one hypothesis over the many alternatives, we use simplicity as in Occam's razor or ontological commitment to determine which theory we should prefer. Here's a chart I made outlining all of the properties of each of these God concepts. Based on Occam's razor or ontological commitment, some version of pantheism is to be preferred. If you prefer to use a different set of traits to describe a god, like saying enormously powerful rather than all-powerful, or saying beginningless, timeless, spaceless, and immaterial rather than saying eternal, that's totally fine. You can just simply replace those on the graph. It makes no real difference. Because all of these God concepts include properties like all-powerful and eternal, they allow for an infinite amount of ad hoc reasoning, so you can essentially make anything work with any of these theories. For example, you can claim the spaghetti monster is non-material by claiming that there are many properties of spaghetti entailed in its all-powerful nature that we simply haven't discovered yet. Therefore, spaghetti can have an immaterial soul just like we can, we just haven't discovered it yet. This is the same kind of infinite ad hoc reasoning that apologists use when they claim an all-good God can allow suffering because there could be potentially more good that's allowed in the future due to the suffering. Using the same reasoning, you could claim that an evil God is the basis of morality by claiming that good is simply the privation of evil, in the same way apologists claim that evil is simply the privation of good from their God. Because we do not yet have an empirical basis for the nature of good or evil, we cannot say with certainty which is the privation of the other, and both arguments are plausible. Apologists usually employ some kind of an analogy, like light and darkness or health and disease. However, both of those we have empirical bases for, unlike good and evil, thereby making them false analogies. Therefore, you can also claim that an evil God allows good for the same reason, because it could allow for greater evil in the future. The simplest way to show that a theist argument doesn't indicate theism is to show that it can indicate any of these mutually exclusive alternatives.